not everybody is happy with how popular they've become. And the fact that police are asking for footage raises a whole...
Hello, Blaine Gray here, Plastering for Beginners, and today I'm going to talk about how to get an Artex boarded ceiling flat. I'm going to show you how to do it the best way. So we've got an existing ceiling, which is Artex, got a big textured pattern, and then next to it we've got a plasterboard that's been fitted, and because there was basically a leak. There's a kitchen I'm working in, there's a bathroom above, and there was a slow leak that pulled the ceiling down. So I've plasterboarded the damaged area, and now what we've got to do is feather the existing into the plasterboard and make sure it's flat. So the best product to use for this is British gypsum bonding, and basically that's a backing plaster that allows you to build out thicker areas. We can't use a finished plaster like British gypsum multi-finish quite yet, because we need to get the thickness to not only cover the texture but also make sure that the plasterboard is built up to the thickness so it's the same as the existing ceiling. So what we're doing, I've got a mix of British gypsum bonding, mixed it fairly thick, and what I'm going to do is cover the whole ceiling with this product. So not just the Artex, but I'm also going to cover the plasterboard. So I've PVA'd the Artex 3:1, 3 parts water, 1 part PVA, but I've also PVA'd the plasterboard. And now you don't need to do that, but basically bonding doesn't like sticking to plasterboard without PVA, so I always PVA the boards as well. And it just means when you are applying the bonding, it's not going to keep falling off, and it's just going to grip to it a lot easier than what it would without it. So I still dropped a bit, but the PVA just helps the bonding bind to the background. So what we're doing, we're just applying it by hand at the moment. I'm going to try and get it as flat as possible just by hand. But like I said, the plasterboard is actually a bit lower than the Artex, so we will need to add quite a bit of thickness to this to get it right. But generally with any Artex ceilings, I used to scrape them, but looking back now and knowing what I know is the fact that a lot of Artex ceilings do actually contain asbestos. So rather than scraping it back, the best plan of action is to actually just go over it with a backing plaster like British gypsum bonding. I wouldn't recommend hardwall for this. I've done it before. It doesn't dry fast enough. So you want to be using bonding because it's designed to be used on medium to low suction backgrounds, i.e. Artex, existing plaster and plasterboard. So I've applied the bonding. What I do is flatten it in sections, and I am using a speed skim. So this ceiling is not completely flat. The joists are everywhere. So the best thing to flatten it for me, this is a Speed Skim ST. It's the plastic blade, and it's perfect for these Artex ceilings, and just generally perfect for flattening off, especially with the bonding. It just does it really easily, and it's nice to use. I mean, some people would use a Derby. I just at this point prefer to use a Speed Skim. So what we're doing, we're just flattening the bonding as best as we can, and as you can see, I'm just doing sections at a time, because the bonding dries a lot faster than plaster, like a finished plaster, like multi-finish. So I've applied the bonding, I've got it everywhere, and generally got it flat. Got the ceiling covered, it's all bonded out, it's flattened. So now what we're going to do is going to give it about 15-20 minutes just to take up a little bit. Then I'm going to start mixing my multi-finish and then start going over it when it's a bit firmer. And that way it'll all dry together, it'll all be as one. So yeah, that's the first process, bonding out the ceiling, flattening it, and making sure the boards meet up to the existing, and then obviously covering up the horrible Artex, which is what we're doing. You heard the seagulls? Evil. Oh, it's been about 15 minutes. I've got the plaster mixed, but as you can see, it's firm. So when you're going to trowel it, it's not going to move when you put the multi-finish on. The last thing you want is to be applying your multi-finish and the bonding's moving underneath your new layer of a plaster. It'll cause air to get trapped between the layers and cause little bubbles, which are a nightmare. So you need the bonding to be slightly stiff. So again, when you're troweling it, it's not moving too much. It's the best time to get on it and get the multi-finish on. So I've got it mixed up, I'm going to bring it in, I'm going to start showing you how to apply it. So like I said, I've got the finished plaster mixed up. I've got it up, and that, like I said, leave it 15-20 minutes at least, because you don't want the bonding to be moving underneath. It'll create ripples, and it'll just actually turn out to be a bit of a disaster. So I've already pre-mixed this plaster. Like I said, it's not a big ceiling to cover here, but it is essential that we're not only using the bonding to flatten, but we're also going to continue in flattening with the multi-finish and make sure we've got any low spots filled, and just make sure that we're getting that ceiling as best as we can, and obviously covering up that horrible Artex. So the good thing about plastering now is I can feel the plaster gripping nicely to the bonding. The bonding's stiff and it's not moving. It's actually a real nice key for the plaster to stick to. So what I'm doing is aiming for the centre of the room with every trowel. Every trowel pulling to the centre, aiming for the light. So you want a big stretch. And if there's any low areas, you can still fill it with multi. There's a low patch here. I'm going to put another layer on, build it up. So even though we've bonded the ceiling, we're still flattening and levelling as we go. And obviously, we're still going to use the speed skin. Again, secret weapon to a flat ceiling is unfortunately the speed skin. You don't need one of these, it just makes it a bit easier, especially when you've got undulations or areas that are lower, higher than the rest of the ceiling. It just helps to gauge where you're at. So not only is it going to flatten it, but you know where to fill, where to cut down. So simple really. Just working to the centre again. I'm always aiming for that light. Now some people would say, does it need 2 coats of plaster? Even with the bonding I still use 2 coats of plaster, because the first coat is going to take that abuse from the bonding. The second coat allows you to fill any areas you've missed. I can already see a few patches that need filling. So I'm going to do a light second coat. I'm not going to do it thick, a very thin layer just to top up that first coat of plaster. So yes, even with the bonding, I'd still do 2 coats of finished plaster. You can see we're already getting that ceiling flat. First coat of plaster is on. It's looking fairly good. We need to apply the second coat, and what I've done, because this is a fairly small ceiling, well it is a small ceiling really, I'm going to use the same mix. Now I'm actually finding using the same mix of plaster for the first and second coat is actually working quite well. I find it binds in at the same time. But if you are a beginner, do 2 separate coats. Get one mix on, separate batch, get that on the ceiling, and then mix a new batch of plaster. You don't really want to be playing with time if you're brand new to plastering and you're plastering ceilings. They can be tricky. So I'm going to use the same mix. I advise you, if you are brand new, get a separate mix for the second coat of plaster. Right, 2 coats are on, it's flattened, it looks good. I've got 2 bits of advice. It's very hot. If you are tempted, you think it's a good idea to leave your windows and doors open, it's not a good idea if you're sweating and you're rushing. If the plaster's setting, don't open your doors because the oxygen will come in, the air will rush in, and it'll speed the plaster up even more so than what you've got at the moment. I'll be honest, this is a little ceiling, I'm doing alright at the moment, so it's all good. Another tip, always carry a bottle of Lynx in your bag, or any deodorant, because I'm sweating and I stink. So it's not good to be walking around like a sweaty man, is it? So carry deodorant. And last tip, wear goggles when you're doing ceilings. I'm very stupid, I don't wear them, I should wear them. I've even got some in my hand, but you should definitely wear goggles. The amount of people I've heard in comments who've ended up in A&E because they've got plaster in the eye. It can go in the eye, burn the retina, and it does a lot of damage. So seriously, wear these bad boys, especially when you're doing ceilings. You should wear them all the time anyway. I felt I had to say because I'm stupid and I don't wear them. So put them on, be a good boy or girl, and wear deodorant. I've got a bit of time, so I'm gonna clean the edges. This is important. You want to leave the house looking better than when you started. So if you've got any excess on the edges of the ceiling and wall, just sponge them off. And then we can trowel it back in. Obviously the wall's really ridged, so the edges aren't going to be perfect, but we're just cleaning any excess. And then when you trowel it in, you don't got too much to play with. We've just got to keep your edges clean. It's a big tip. And people do pay attention to stuff like this, and you will be judged on it, so make sure you keep your edges nice and clean. First coat of plaster, flattened it, applied the second coat, flattened it. This is obviously after the bonding stage. Now all we're going to do is just run through the motions. You've done the hard bit if you're at this stage, you've got the plaster on, you should have it level. If you look now, we're starting to polish it up, clean the edges. Again, if you don't have time to clean the edges, just use frog tape or masking tape to save yourself some time. Now we're just going to keep flattening. I didn't want to use water too early because I knew the plaster was still slightly wet, especially with the bonding. It don't matter if you've not used the bonding to cover Artex, but if you have, just avoid getting the plaster too wet again because it moves and it creates little rivets and dimples, so you don't want to do that. Now I'm going to get the water brush out, walk around the edges and just flatten the ceiling and just keep going until we've got it to a point where it's smooth. So I've got another 2 flattens with a trowel and then I'm going to show you what to do. So I'm just going to run through that stage just so you don't get bored. flattened, we flattened. And now we're going to flatten again. But this time we're using a Superflex trowel. I'm going to get Manila Black Edition, which is a medium flex flexi trowel. And I'm going to do a wet trowel. This is basically where you wet the edges and you wet the majority of the ceiling and then you trowel it. This just helps to get it smooth, but it also polishes the ceiling. And then I'm going to finish with a plastic trowel, my favourite trowel probably for polishing. It's called a Rafina Plaza Flex. So I'm going to show you this now. I'm going to go through it. Well, that is the best way to level and plaster a ceiling. If you like this video, please like and subscribe to our channel. It would mean the world to us if you did, to keep us going, keep us making content. And also feel free to sign up to our beginner's welcome course. If you are new to plastering and you want to learn the full process on how to plaster a wall, which tools to use, how to mix plaster, the full beginner's guide to plastering is free. Just sign up using the link below this video, or there should be something around here at some point. And then free course on how to start plastering, whether you're brand new or you've done a bit before. It's ideal for anyone who wants to get into the game. So thanks a lot for watching. Really appreciate it, and I'll see you on the other side. Cheers, bye.